our global friends. It's Izabela here, and I'm super thrilled to be back with Joe here for our Leadership Roundtable discussion this Saturday morning. And we look forward for your participation and opportunity to have this conversation together and truly understand why we are experiencing and seeing some really interesting things happening personally, professionally, while we're seeing also how cultures are affecting or not affecting well-being, as well as what's happening with talent teams and organizations, and obviously where their driving forces for success, and what those are, and how to build them, and what to do when you're missing some of those, and then how all of those, what we will be talking about, comes to back to amazing strength and resilience of our friends and colleagues in Ukraine, and how we can all make magic happen. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Joe, who, if you didn't have a chance to hear from him before or have watched live with both of us, this is so you guys are for the treat. How are you doing, Joe?
Good morning, Izabela. Good morning, everyone. I'm doing great. Great to be here.
Fantastic. And we have here Heather with us. Heather, thank you so much for being with us. One of amazing woman speaker with great background and so much support, not only about other women, but just everyone that wants to elevate their game. So great to have you. We're also having Sonu. Thank you so much for being here. And of course, our friend that has been with us from the episode number 1. And we believe it or not, legal, we're already on episode 4. So thank you for being with us on this journey of major transformation. And absolutely great also to see you coming from India, Liga coming from Costa Rica. And I believe Heather is somewhere, I believe Florida, if I can remember correctly. So without further ado, we are really having very hot topics today. And they came up based on not only what Joe and I do on a regular basis and what we're helping others to overcome, but also based on comments, based on experiences and importance that we just cannot absolutely ignore anymore, right? So Joe, we were talking about here importance of mental health and wellness, specifically those programs, right? And we're also talking about how do we create a culture of well-being. And more than anybody, both of us have two extremes parallel here, but all of it's interconnected. And Joe, you come from very complex lens of people that are in trenches and high pressure, high responsibility, 911 responders, first responders of everything, basically, right? For public safety, helping others, all the way to the top, where we're also looking at C-suite and crisis prevention, crisis intervention. So where do we start?
You know, it's very tempting, and I see this happen a lot, to start with things like programs and policies and procedures, and it's exactly the wrong place to start. So when we talk about organizations and we talk about people and we talk about things like mental health, resilience, and strength, we always have to go back to two fundamentals. One fundamental is remembering what and who we're dealing with. We're dealing with human beings, and the question is, what do human beings want? As many programs as you put in place and as closely as you pay attention to the bottom line, none of it will be optimized. None of it will come out the way you're imagining if you treat people like cogs in a machine that are purely replaceable, because at that point you'll start replacing them. And by the way, that becomes very expensive. So we think about what is it that human beings want? And in some of my workshops, I ask my audiences, what do human beings want? And we bounce around and they give me all kinds of answers. And I said, okay, fundamentally, what do people want?
Yes.
And they say, they usually hit the top 3. And the top 3 in my mind are, number 1, they want to be respected. And I don't know anybody who doesn't want to be respected. I've dealt with criminal types who want to be respected, people who are being arrested want to be respected, people at the top of the chain, people at the bottom of the chain. They all want to be respected. Number 2 is that people want to be loved. It's not popular to say something like that, you know?
Not from you with your background. Come on. So now you are completely taking down the shield that most men in law enforcement and government and C-suite positions, playing the tough guys in direct response from policing to you name it. Come on, where are they going now? Laugh?
So I asked that question in a program once, and I remember a gentleman sitting behind someone else who very sheepishly poked his head out from behind that person and said, "To be loved?" I was like, "Yeah, yes, that is the answer."
What a concept.
Exactly. And the question is, do you love your staff? Do you love your staff? And we'll get into the question of do you love yourself a little bit later, but the question is, do you love
You
your
just
staff?
preemptively cut me off there, but okay, we'll wait. I guess we'll wait. But we have to also set up the stage because we have to really understand what always comes first, right? Because we need to really lay the foundation that is going to bring people's success. And
Yes.
you can be successful if you don't feel successful, if you do not love yourself and don't even know what love is, and if you don't have a respect for yourself. How can you seek and demand respect from others? And also, how do you know not just what feels good, those little pleasures, which everybody gets confused? I just got my ice cream, I get my chocolate. Oh, I'm just going to do all of those things that make me happy for that moment. And we think that is love and that is satisfaction. In reality, that is just perpetuation of what we really all need to work on, which is the inner work, inner muscle. Inner muscle that so many of us work so hard for it and really shows on that unwavering confidence, unwavering passion, and also strength and resilience. But all of that obviously has to start with sense of how do I feel about myself this morning?
Yes.
Do I like how I look? Did I take a shower, basic hygiene to make it better? Did I put an effort, not just for audience, but for me to feel good about me? Right? And then how do I show up? What energy do I exude? Am I faking it till I'm making it, or if it's real?
Yeah, absolutely on the nose. And we will talk a little bit more deeply about that a little bit later. You just said this phrase that we hear a lot, fake it till we make it. And an alternative that I heard that I like a lot and can be a challenge is face it till you make it. Instead of fake it till you make it, face it till you make it. Deal with the things that you have to deal with. Think about this piece of respect and this piece about love. And the third piece being that people want to be heard or listened to. And one thing that you can see in organizations all the time is people that get what they need by being listened to, even if their issue can't be solved, even if the policy can't change, even if they don't get satisfaction in a job sense, they get the satisfaction of having been heard. And that counts for as much, if not more, than the rest of it. One of the things that we hear a lot is line staff, employees, one of the biggest gripes that they have is that they don't hear from supervisors until they make a mistake. They don't get positive feedback. They don't feel like they're heard. And a huge factor that I've seen in organizations is that supervisors don't follow up. So when people don't follow up, the employees are left, as our brains will do, our brains will fill in the gaps of information. And so you have all kinds of staff members, employees who are filling in the gaps themselves with the wrong information because they don't have information coming from their supervisors, for example. So the first piece that we're talking about is human desires, human needs, to be respected, to be loved, to be heard or listened to. And the second factor that we're going to dive into is this question of culture, because we can't program wellness and well-being and literally programs like that until we understand what is it we're about. What is it that we as an organization want to be? And if we haven't figured out what we want to be, then how do we know whom to attract? Are we,
Mm.
are we, go ahead.
Hold on. That's so powerful. Because we hear, and you and I have seen in recent months, a lot of individuals that were like in drama, in pain, unhealed, and then literally splattering their pain and agony and anticipation of disaster and ruining everything that is going on well for them. Because they don't realize, like, everywhere they show up, because they have that already story and negativity and all of those things that we are talking about right now, without fully realize how major conduit to experiences they're having, they're actually recreating and creating, even though there was not prior state or a reality, but it's their reality. And as a result, they attract more pain, more confusion, more drama, more issues.
And every time that comes out, that's information, right? That's a signal that
Yeah.
says inside of me there is XYZ that still has to be addressed. And the temptation, unfortunately, is to go outward and say that person made me so angry, so whatever. It's their fault that I reacted this way. And the fact of the
Or it's
matter is that's
happening
not
all the
true.
time like this, right? We hear this one too. This is always happening to me. People are
Mm.
here to get me, and playing the victim and scapegoating everybody else, but really looking at ourselves. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's sorry. So that second piece is okay. We talk about culture, and culture is becoming like one of those words like leadership, or in my world, the word mafia. We say it so often that people don't stop to think about what that actually means. What is a culture? What is the culture of your organization? Because you have one. Whether it's good or bad is a different story, but you have one. And when we talk about culture, we're talking about things like, just think about the culture of a country. We're talking about things like rituals, about language, about history, about combined effort, about how we speak with each other. It's about the language that we use. It's about the parameters that we set. Think about this. You have a child's 4 years old. The child says a bad word. Now, the next question is, what do you do next? Do you say, oh, that's my boy, growing up to be a tough guy, saying 4-letter words? Or do you say, Johnny, we don't talk like that here? And those two steps are the steps of creating culture. We have decided that we do not talk like that to each other. We have decided that that kind of language is not allowed in the house. That kind of language is not allowed in the workplace. I deal with a lot of people and a lot of organizations that speak very freely in 4-letter words. That's part of their culture. Okay? But
Is the one that starts with a F by the chance?
it might.
And
Oh,
funny, it must be funny.
it must be funny, exactly. And Liga's making such a critical point. It's do we have core values, authentic values that have actually been articulated?
Yes.
That the people involved have been able to participate and contribute in defining what those values are, or have the values, quote unquote values, been legislated, been inserted from a small team or committee at the top, and the people at the bottom are saying, wait a second, no one asked me. Nobody asked me, is this what we want? Is this what we want as a collective? I'll give you a small, quick example. I worked in an organization that did not care at all about the line staff. And the attitude at the top was, if the junior employees don't like it, they can go away because we have so many people who want to work here. And junior employees did go away. And we had tremendous turnover. And what do you think happened over time? The people who went away set up competing firms. So that company I worked in lost its standing and lost its stature as the world's leading expert in that industry. And it was all because of attitude. And it all was because that the people at the top, number one, didn't care. Number two, never understood, never learned anyone's names, never really had that kind of interaction, Whereas on the other hand, I met somebody who was the CEO of an organization who had 130 people and learned every single person's name and something about them. Now, how do you think the difference is of how people felt working in those places?
And which really brings the element of how do we look at people? Do you see them as employee and number, or you see them as a talent and with amazing skill sets that they can contribute, and also as an amazing team and as a team environment, right? And then overall, what that organization is all about. What is that of like bull eyes eye with when you look at what is that target, and what is that all about? What we're striving towards, right? And then what that looks like on the day-to-day basis. Because a lot of times when we look at here, people want us, I'm sure everybody talk to you as well, that they're talking to me, they say, we want to be success driving forces, we want to be a successful organization, we want to be the number one. And then crickets. When you tell them what it takes to be number one, do you get those reactions too? Because what happens is people get shocked. It's like, oh, I need to change. I need to adjust my game. I need to be slightly different than I'm already am. I need to be able to present myself in a different light, not being anything outside of yourself, but being better version of yourself. Because it's like we have people that are super smart and they dial in their system they're using, they dial into their role, but they did not dial in who they are and who they show up as on a daily basis in an environment. And that's exactly what you just said, just from looking from a different lens. How can you then expect cultural well-being if well-being is not even slightly represented, and we don't even know what that looks like, let alone what the feels like, if we don't have a representation? And if we do have a representation, how do you maintain that?
That's such a great point. Think about your organizations, whatever that organization is. What does well-being actually look like? What does well-being actually feel like? What assumptions are we making about the people around us? One thing that is always miraculous to me is when you have an employee who is tenured, they've been there 20 years, 30 years, what starts happening to them? If they are the disgruntled, grumpy person, people start isolating them, they start isolating themselves, and they come up not smiling and they don't say hello to anybody. And the rest of us kind of look at them and say, oh, they're just miserable people. And maybe the answer is, we haven't talked to them in the last 5 years. Maybe the answer is we haven't asked them any questions. And maybe the answer is we haven't asked for their contribution because they've been here a long time. They have a lot of institutional memory and they're getting freaked out because they're getting older. They've got 20-something kids running circles around them with technology. They're scared. They're uncertain. And they have to figure out, how am I going to survive the next 4 years, 3 months, and 2 days that I've already counting down to my retirement? And therefore, I'm retired on the job. And I'm not going to be a contributor to the wellness, the well-being of this organization. And the rest of us kind of write them off. So the question is, what are our assumptions about the people around us? And have we isolated people, and have those people isolated themselves, so that the really hard part is extending, whatever you want to call it, building a bridge, an olive branch, whatever it is, to help reintroduce that person into the team and the team concept, because you're actually missing a lot of things that could be coming out of that person if they've already checked out.
That is excellent point. And again, as we know, representation matters, but also modeling after and knowing what we model, what are core ingredients, right? And what is that work-life balance? What is that proper eating? What is that proper way of dealing with the stress? What is when we reach a certain thresholds to ask for help? How is the way we can do? But if we don't feel that we are safe, if we don't feel like we can be trusted environment that we're in, we're not going to ever disclose how we really feel and what's going on. Only time when we do disclose turmoil and inner issues is when we do feel safe and when we trust that person or that group or whatever might be scenario. A lot of times people that experience that may not be prepared. They don't know what to do with that. And that is also very important. How do you deal and how you navigate on receiving it? Sometimes people also with best intentions trying to do the best things and they can also backfire. So it's a very important, as you mentioned, to really understand and accurately assess situation. Because I'm seeing this all the time. From my background being constantly in crisis intervention, from rehabilitation of the people that experience the worst possible human atrocities, from people also that's being consistently in a war zone, and where is crisis every second, let alone every minute, let alone every hour or every day, and it goes for years and years on. You're amazed how much you can actually tolerate, adjust to it, but also how you can build inner game, which we're talking about. And those are the two key elements, right? How do we build that inner strength and how do we build that resilience?
So one of the things that comes to mind as I was thinking about this conversation is the word engagement. We talk about the word engagement all the time, and we talk about it, I think, primarily in terms of our organization with our customers, with our market. And here's a central question. What is our level and quality of engagement inside the organization? Mm-hmm. What is that, our kind of engagement between and among employees? How many or what type of cliques and bullying do we have inside our organization? And is it a question that culture and our guiding principles have not addressed it? Do people even know that bullying is not acceptable? Well, you know what? Most of the time, organizations never talk about that. We don't talk about this concept of bullying or belittling in relationship to language. So these organizations I was talking about earlier use a lot of colorful language, and that's fine for them because that's their reality. And the line that they can't step over is the line of belittling and demeaning using that same kind of language. Right. So if you have there's language in the places I work with that would be totally unacceptable in corporate environments, and that's totally fine. But the question is, are the employees clear about what's allowable and what's not allowable? Has it actually been said? Because so many times when we talk about culture, we talk about hiring and interviewing and all the rest of it, all those pieces that, by the way, culture has to be infused in at every stage, is have we actually said it? That here is what we stand for. Here are our principles. Here are the values that we espouse inside the organization. And here's how we speak to each other.
I think you are also getting a lot. And thank you so much. I just want to quickly say thank you, Sana, for joining us, Saura, and everybody else. It's great to have you. Feel free to ask us questions. Feel free to participate. We would love to hear your comments as we're continuing with this very important conversation that is really helping us to depict and understand causes and effects of situations we're in today and things that we see not only here in the United States, but around the world. With that in mind, you know what's so very interesting? We hire for culture. That is misrepresented all the time because it's a living beast, depending which department or division or organization you go. And then also what is in somebody's head of that ideal. But then yet, even those people they're hiring, they're not exhibiting that themselves. So it's like, oh, okay, we're in ballpark, we're here, but give us flexibility. So let's wing it and play it as we go. Then you have things depending who you ask, male versus female. Things that female are shocked. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe the boys are talking openly about this. You know, that is an appropriate language, even if it's not directed to me. It's harassment, it's over explicit, or it's whatever. It is also dynamics that we're dealing in. And then on top of it, we're adding that we're having global co-workers, people from absolutely different cultures on their own, now trying to be melted in this hodgepodge culture. And on top of that, we say one thing and we do completely another. How confusing that has to be. Put so many people in overdrive. As a result, there also increases so much stress, creates so much anxiety, and really a lot of people are lost because people are pressured. I need to keep a job, but yet I can't be in this environment. And that is how we get into that bull in front syndrome, and that's how we also get into insanely intense situations that then sometimes shock us. How do we react, or how do we feel, without really fully understanding how long it took us to get to that pivotal breaking point. So we're also having here Matthew. Yes, you're on the right call. You're on the right live, and it's so great to have you. And it's no problem. That's great. I'm glad you had a successful live yourself, Matthew. He is joining us from Ireland. It's great to see you, friends from all over the world. I always love doing these lives because, as the world messenger, getting message from the world to the world back, from my experiences and Joe's experiences, we really love to see this amazing global representation. So, with that in mind, so Joe, what did you learn about yourself or situations, not only through your training and your background, but would you say it was key for you, and it still is, to continue to build your resilience, to continue to build that inner strength, and to really realize this is my trigger, or this is the pain point, or this is something I need to work on? And because all of us have that, right? Quicker we're aware of and self-aware and self-assess, the better we'll be, right? And what would you advise for everybody watching and listening? Because so many are struggling with that. Oh my goodness, so great to see you, Rollis. I'm glad you're joining, because guess what? Joe is in Aston, so Texas is winning big here.
So there are a couple of things. One is, when we talk about resilience, inner strength, and things like emotional intelligence, ideally, these things are about self-regulation. And the question really is, do we have tools and techniques that work well for us, that we can remember, practice, and use in those moments, right? So I grew up in a large family, I've mentioned that before, the ninth of 12 kids, and we have a very high concentration of very talented people and very successful people. I being the ninth, I was looking up that line and convinced myself growing up, there's no way I can do that. There's no way I can do that. One's a priest, one's a dentist, one's a lawyer, and it was just too much, right? So one of the things that started helping me was traveling, because I traveled to Russia at a young age. I think I was 20 when I first started traveling there. And then having all these experiences of living in China prior to the boom and the growth in the Chinese economy, and traveling all over Europe and all the rest of it. So it opened my eyes to alternative ways of being, let's put it like that. And that's fine. And we move on. And as you know very well, you've traveled all over the world. You've had a lot of experiences, grew up in former Yugoslavia. So that idea, the thing about traveling, has an impact. It leaves you somehow different than you were before, and gives you a perspective that's very different from people who never left their town, for example.
Yes.
So that's one piece is, okay, I see these things about myself. What is it that I need to think about? What is it I need to do? What is it I need to shift in myself to help, excuse me, keep hitting this microphone, to help us get better outcomes. So I developed a lot of techniques and tools for myself, because we grew up in a very explosive kind of Sicilian volcano environment. And so I had to understand and learn how to start controlling that temper. And over the years, it was pretty successful. And I have three top things that helped me get through a lot of situations. So if I can take just a second. The first one is to breathe. First one is to breathe. And when people tell you that, they say, just breathe, just breathe. And you want to shove them out of your way, because it feels at the moment to be not helpful. And what they don't tell you growing up or later in life is that that's scientific. It's not just, oh, just breathe, just breathe. If you have a deep abdominal inhalation with your abdomen expanding on the inhale, and you do that 3 times in a row, that already starts to turn off the stress response and turn on the relaxation response. So we can already start self-regulating if we can remember to breathe. We'll get to that in a second. The second thing is, in the last couple of years, I've started using my mother as a point of reference. My mom passed away in April of 2019. She raised 12 kids. She was an amazing woman. She did all kinds of wonderful things for the church, for the community, for the family. She was very talented, very skilled. And I thought about her passing. So I use all of these. In particular, the memory I'm having right now is when I had to go on television in front of 15 million people. And I start getting nervous. So I sat on my bed in the hotel in Los Angeles. I breathed. I thought about my mother. And then I went to tool number 3. And tool number 3 was, for me, growing up on Long Island, is the World Trade Center. And I thought about the people that I knew who died in the World Trade Center, who I went to school with, the spouses of the people that I went to school with who perished in the World Trade Center. And growing up on Long Island, virtually every town had 20, 30, 40 families who had somebody who died. So I sit there and I think about, okay, there is nothing about going on television in front of 15 million people. There's really nothing about any of these things in my life that I have to do that's scarier than the choice of either dying in flames or dying from jumping out of the 85th floor window of a building. Right? The false choice. And so I sat there in the hotel in Los Angeles and I thought through these 3 things and said, okay, by the end of this, I'm ready to go, and did the thing that I had to do. Okay. And I used that and other tools many, many times in the past. So here's the debate I've been having with myself about this phone call. I've been debating about this idea of having an exchange on a Zoom type platform. And my old self would say, no, actually, Izabela, you alluded to this earlier when you said, wait a second, cops and dispatchers and commanders and people like that, crisis managers, CEOs, we don't have to be perfect all the time.
Really? You get a permission to be something else different than that? That is exactly the point, because we are trained to be very always on, and it's impossible. Specifically, if we're also not in private and personal life off, where we can do self-care. And that's where the backfires, right? You can't constantly be receiving, and being constantly intervention and the crisis without having an outlet when you turn off the switch. And in order to turn off that switch, that means working on your sleep, working on your good health, working on your exercise, eating habits. And that is the process you said we're going to be talking about, which is perfect to insert here. Discovering self-love. I am worthy to be in optimal health. I'm worthy to live to 100 and whatever years old. I want full, fulfilled life, but I need to take actions. And one of the reasons, and including here from Joseph, who is joining us from Cape Town, South Africa, it's so great to have you join us from there. And he has a very powerful question. How about having a seemingly mismatching culture on those of your dream company? When it's a very hard, and I will let Joe answer that as well. But I wanted just to say, Joseph, that is really fantastic question, because it's inner conflict then. It's a struggle. When is something mismatching and it's not aligned with our values or our ultimate way, how we really feel the best, affects everything. Affects your performance, your concentration, affects your success, affects your relationship with your peers and everyone else around it. Joe, your thoughts?
Yes. So here's one of the things about Dream Company. It's dream. It's Dream Company. Dreams, in a sense, the sense that I'm getting at it right now, are not necessarily real. And we get inside of that organization and we see things that are different than the perception we had outside. And the things that Izabela was just talking about, then we have to step back and say, wait a second, does this align with my values? Do I know what my values are? Is this a place I can stay? Do I want to be part of this organization? Or do I need to step out? And by the way, how much research do I have to do beforehand, before I step into that company and say, oh, I really love it. And by the way, inside and outside match. So part of the thing is not what the company is going to do for you. It's what is it that you're looking for? What is it that's inside of you, of your identity, your values, and does that company live up to your expectations rather than you having to fit into somebody else's expectations? For example, one of the companies that I worked for was this kind of dream company. And I actually avoided approaching them for, I think, about 2 years because I decided they were a dream company. Oh my God, they're so wonderful. There's no way I could work there. And I ended up working there for 5 years because I created in my mind the dream factor being so much more perfect than actually existed in real life. Because we create these assumptions about dream organizations. We create these assumptions based on what we hear in the media, what we hear in, people tell, oh, it's a wonderful company. They've got a name. Oh, what a reputation. All of that stuff fades away when you have to go to work every day. When you realize that the actual culture inside is really not healthy for you in particular. Right? So I was in a job for 1 month. At the end of that month, I realized the fit was totally wrong. We should not have been together, me and this organization. It was a state organization in New York. And I had to make a move because that was not the place for me.
And if you don't mind, you just recognizing what is not for you and taking action and making bold steps and looking what else it is. Because I love also that we wanted that ideal, unless we have ideal and opportunity to create that dream company ourselves, and then dream employees that we want, someone that we really get along and someone that really shares our values, philosophy, and then start at it. That is also opportunity and one way to look at. But reality is, every business is facing challenges. Every business is having struggles. Doesn't matter how small or large. Reality is, who is up for that challenge in the long run? How do we react to those challenges? How do we approach to solve them? How do we communicate it about those challenges? Because one of the key things that we're seeing, and it's pattern over and over, assuming that we're heard and understood versus truly understanding what is going on and how do we really tackle problem at hand. Joe, honestly, how many times, from consulting world and everything you've been exposed, you find people solving wrong problem because they don't even really diagnose it properly, they did not understood correctly, or they didn't bother, they just ran on surface level and they assumed that was the case.
Yeah, if you ask employees what they do in an organization, a lot of times they won't tell you the right answer. You know why? Because they don't know what they do in the organization. They don't know how their effort is attached to the bigger picture. And if you don't have an identification of how your function contributes to the larger picture, then you get stuck, pushing paper back and forth, being a widget inside of machinery that you can't see the whole impact of. That becomes disheartening, right? What is it beyond? If you look at respect, love, being heard or listened to, there are other things that human beings want and be part of in an organization. One is meaningfulness. How do you develop and grow meaningfulness if you don't know how you're connected to the rest of the world around you? Meaningfulness, choice, competence, and progress. And those are 4 key things that human beings need to see. And by the way, they are not necessarily tied to income. The studies have been done for the last 50 years about the role of money as a motivating factor or as a hygiene factor, as they were called. And we need a certain amount of money. That's true, except that is not the end all be all. If it
It's a
were,
one component of 2 or 4 or 5 or 10 that are essential, depending on the role or depending in which environment you're working in, right?
yes, and it's a necessary factor, but it's not a sufficient factor. And if it were sufficient, then anyone who has money would be happy or okay, or whatever, however you want to call it. And we know that's not the case. So part of the question is building in things like meaningfulness into the work environment. So to loop back to where this segment began was about my debate with myself about whether to have this conversation today. Because on a certain level, we're here, we've got our names on the screen, and we've written books on fear and emotional intelligence and all this stuff. And the thing that I wanted to say, which I've never said in a public venue before, is we don't have all the answers. I have a lot of tools for resilience and emotional intelligence and dealing with fear and all of that. And I can tell you very frankly that this past week, all of it fell apart. All of it fell apart. This has been a horrible week. And one of the reasons is that I forgot all of my tools and techniques and totally ran with these triggers and emotions and feelings and all the rest of it and went way off the reservation. And this is what one of the messages that I want to tell you today. And think about yourself and think about your employees, the people around you. One of the many things that I did this week was self-isolate. When I started getting triggered, I started self-isolating. And here's the thing. A couple of my best friends grabbed me from that space. They grabbed me from that space. And they said basically, dude, what's going on? Dude, this is not whatever. This is not healthy. This is not the right way. You're spinning and all of that, all those kinds of things. And this is to say this. Nobody is right all the time. Nobody has it all together all the time. And this week in particular, I had to revisit those issues for myself and say, you're trying to control things that you can't control. You're trying to control things that you shouldn't control. And you're not getting, I think you said the phrase earlier, this idea of getting the best out of yourself, whether it's through self-love or resilience and inner strength and all the rest. So the point is this, especially on the heels of all these shootings we've been having, don't isolate yourself and don't let other people isolate. Because to me, that's the number one thing that when we isolate, there's only one place to go. And the place we go is deeper inside our minds. And deeper inside our minds is not a place we want to go to. When we've forgotten all of our tools and techniques, when we have hurt people around us, shot ourselves in the foot, failed to think about consequences, take for granted people around you. I did all of those things this week. And so the question is, what's going on inside of me? How do I recalibrate myself for self-regulation? How do I go forward and say, all right, what's going on? Where did it come from? Because they're signals, they're always signals. They're signals that there's something that I need to deal with. Maybe multiple somethings that I need to deal with. And the fact of the matter is that we have to deal with our things. And they have direct impact on all of our relationships, all of our culture, all of our performance levels inside organizations. It's actually unavoidable if we're going to talk about success. However you define that, And I prefer the most broad definition. If we're going to talk about success, the hard part, the hardest part, let's go back to Joe's comment, the hardest part of becoming part of your dream organization, the hardest part of being a dream employee for an organization has nothing to do with what's outside of you. How the outside world looks depends a lot on how the inside world is.
Yes, and how we project, how do we interpret, how do we run with, and when we're in that run and flight and pain and drama or whatever, then everything just amplifies, and as a result, we're seeing unprecedented amounts of conflicts, misunderstandings. We're fortunately seeing unprecedented time of also people at work showing up that you were like, oh, I never expected that our coworker will ever do something like this, because people miss the signs and signals of somebody struggling. People miss the signs and signals of somebody reaching out for help. And the worst thing to do is to dismiss them, to judge them, to turn back and to say, I'm better than this, oh, I don't need this, or I don't want that. You have to have, of course, set healthy boundaries. But at those moments, it's no room for ego. It's no room for play. It's no room for making jokes. It's about time to truly be in compassionate and centered in compassion and kindness and also empathy. Because the key thing is we became society of so much judgment and society of so much immediately knowing all and running with the stories and amplifying and dramatizing and sharing with everybody and anybody. And what do? We shame, we embarrass even that person that was reaching out and was so much in turmoil that they will never want to do that again. And frankly, that is unfortunate right now because we're seeing two patterns. One is suicide with teenagers. And the other one is suicide with adults that you just typically will not ever expect in their late 50s and early 60s, because they've been through so much in their life that they're like, Izabela, what's the upside? I'm in so much pain. Everything is collapsing. I don't have nothing in me to give. When you get to that point of burnout, when you get at that point of break, of knowing that you don't have nothing anymore left, and you don't want to move forward, that is the one of the most challenging things to witness and one of the most challenging things to face, directly or indirectly. So what I wanted to say, when we look at wellness programs, as Joe started, it's not about just, this is the program, this is what's available, and all the grocery lists and everything else. We're giving apps, we're giving money, we're giving this, we're giving that. But what we're not giving is back to basic human connection and interaction. I respect you. I hear you. I want to really know. I am here for you. I love you. You're important to me. I want you to be also here tomorrow. What can I do? Let's figure this together. Let me help you. What can I do? What do you think will be good next step? Okay, this is what I'm thinking. How about let me help you and take this over? You don't have to worry about this. What else can I do? That is how we need to show up. That is where it is going to bring wellness programs not only to be phenomenal, because we addressed mental health issues that we're burned out, overloaded. But why? Because we're also looking where we are. Are we part of the culture and environment that we can really have a well-being? And if we're not, what we need to change? The same thing as an independent contributor, from talent to team to organization, how successful driving forces there are there. Are we driving in the same direction or not? Are we tapping into strength or resilience? And I really want to segue now, which I think it's a perfect time. And again, Joe, thank you for sharing that so vulnerably, because we don't have everything figured out. Because guys, if we do, frankly, we'll not have a shit shows that we're seeing right now today. And yes, I use the word shit shows because guess what, guys? There are unacceptable magnitude of issues with intelligent human beings on this planet, and with education and technology and everything we have under the sun. We still do the most vicious, horrible things to one another. from bullying, as you said, adults bullying each other. That is broken, unhealthy human being. But how do we get there? How do we get to point also that we're looking at one of the worst possible wars, not because just 21st century started, but that is repeated from 100+ years, 300 years, gruesome conflicts of primitive way of thinking and acting, frankly, and imposing on others, not just one person, but millions and millions of others. And we are sitting on sidelines and watching. How can we justify our behavior? How can we justify our part? Because guess what? Sitting on the sidelines, being complacent is the worst killer of every cause or everything else that we stand for. If we do not show up, if we don't raise our voice, if we do not act because we know it's the right thing to do. It's not easy to be a leader. It's not even, frankly, easy to be showing up as a coworker today. It doesn't matter what role we play. The more we play just to get by, less we're going to have to look forward to it. I can tell you, frankly, less is going to be amazing dream jobs and opportunities because those will be overtaken and will be less to find inner joy. And this is not dramatization, guys. You know what? I'm diehard optimist. But you will never guess, unless you already know me, that I survived a war and genocide and ethnic cleansing and war trauma and a million other things since that. That I'm sitting on global board for Genocide Coalition on global scale. That I'm talking to guys who are veterans on genocide as subject matter experts around the world. And they're saying, we're tired, Izabela. What we're realizing, genocide will never stop. We were hoping that will stop during our times, but yet they're not. Do we give up? Do we keep going? Or do we make a change? So reason why I'm bringing all this together, if one life matters, if somebody's not feeling good, that creates ripple effect because everybody's life matters. And every situation, we have opportunity right now to do something about it. If we don't, we may not have that person sitting across the room and having conversations tomorrow. So do we want to live with regrets? Do we want to look at 20, 30 years later to say we ignored the pivotal moment in history and we ignored, look at where we are today? Joe, what are your thoughts?
You know, as you say that, I'm imagining the big bosses referring to all their people, all their soldiers as pawns of just pieces to move around the board. And the fact of the matter is, they're not pieces. They're human beings who have families, who have lives, and who are losing everything. In this particular battle, where they're losing everything. They've lost their homes. More than 10 million people are refugees from Ukraine. How many people have died? 15, 20,000 at least. They've lost everything, and they are people who wanted nothing more than to raise their children and have good lives and live in peace.
And how many of them are taken to concentration camps to Russia? How many of them do we don't know where the whereabouts are? And how many of them are uprooted from their regular daily life? Please.
So on July 10th, we will be in Los Angeles for a fundraiser on behalf of Ukraine and ukrainenow.org from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. We hope you can join us in person, online, help contribute in any way you can to easing people's pain. This is about people. It's not about politics. This is about people and helping to ease people's pain. That's what we do in organizations, or we have the opportunity to do in organizations every single day. If we have the right set of eyes and the right kind of language to help not isolate people around us. And we can do on this scale to help not isolate Ukrainian people, to help not forget about the depths to which other people are struggling.
And I love what you said, because everybody's life matters, right? And right now, when we look at it, I posted the link for everybody listening and watching, and not only in comment section, but in the main area invitation of the BBC interview where Arthur Quillian, which is the young founder of Ukrainian now, who switched very quickly and adjusted his game and created this nonprofit. And from day one, yes, they have a 501c3 designation, but he's not missing a beat. He had to miss the job, regular job and work, and say goodbye to all of that. He's working crazy hours, 24/7 available to help with the direct rescue mission of people. So for lives matter, let's help opportunity right now for them to be not only rescued, but also rebuild later on, because we need to have this switch. Not just because, as they say, Izabela, you're from Europe. Of course, Europe and Ukraine and Croatia and Ukraine are very important to you. Not just because every part of the world is important to me. But right now, we're going to understand from global perspective what implication this war is having right now on every single individual. We're seeing high skyrocketing inflation. We're seeing high gas prices. We're seeing shortages in certain products, and we're seeing shortages in certain foods specifically, right? What do you guys think? We became so codependent, actual exports from Ukraine. Ukraine is being such an amazing player on international and global trade. And all of that gets disrupted in a split second. Not just looking things from economical reasons, but we also have to look at from human reasons. And those guys are teaching us what strength and resilience is. Not all of them are fleeing. Not all of them are running away. So many of them are willing to take a risk and say, no matter what happened, I don't want to leave my fellow Ukrainians behind. Teachers that lost all their children in classroom are stepping in to give a helping hand. We have a chance and opportunity to do the same. And reason why I'm asking you guys, because they need our help. Nothing of greater good is ever accomplished single-handedly. Nothing historically, if we look at, made a change or transformation without community coming together. We see major shift in news coverage. We see major issues that we're facing in every single country. And God knows we are having plenty of those right now in the United States. But guess what? That particular problem that gets solved is going to help with so many of the problems we're starting up right now in the US. So let's be smart. Let's be human. Let's be, first and foremost, great global citizens. Show and demonstrate, as Joe said, what that means to respect and value every life, what it means to be supportive of another, how it means also to show up and share that resilience, and then how to really speak about things that are challenging. Look at Joe's background. Look at where he's been. Look at what he does today and how vulnerably he shared some of his own challenges. And how also we're sharing challenges that others are facing. And only way we can do it was a change in attitude and change in approach. Right, Joe?
For sure. There's no other way to do it.
Fantastic. And I just wanted to say, Liga, I love your heart. I love your participation. And joining us from Costa Rica was absolutely a pleasure. Sanyan, I know you came from India and you have to leave. Joseph, was amazing to have your participation and joining us here from obviously Cape Town, South Africa. Of course, the good old Texas representation is here. So that can ever escape. Rallis, was awesome to have you. We also had a Matthew who is joining us from Ireland, who was juggling his own show and was still able to show us. We also have a Suraf who was joining us from India. And then we have many others that were here earlier and then have to go. But I know that many of you are watching without commenting, and that's completely okay. I know this was very interesting, very deep, and hopefully transformational and profound on many levels, because as you guys know, leadership roundtables that I run, they're all about real and raw. We're not going to be fluffing it, but we're going to also talk about with high respect with one another with honesty, transparency. And that's what we need more of. So thank you again for everybody showing up. Thank you for watching the BBC video to see why Joe and I from all organizations are absolutely gung-ho to help Arthur and his cause, and why we are doing the event that we're doing and stepping up right in front and center boldly to stand for something that is right things to do and necessary things to do right now. So thank you, dear friends and colleagues. It was an absolute pleasure. And don't hesitate to reach out with any comments, questions directly to Joe and I. Okay. Until next time, see you on Tuesday.
See you.